Good morning. I'm very happy to be here today to talk about healing the mind through A Course in Miracles. I started getting really serious about mind healing about 2003 or 4, something like that. I found a little book by Dan Joseph, which helped me a lot. It had a very simple 3-step process that helped me to get started doing really, really serious work with mind healing. The 3 steps was to notice the thoughts in my mind, to give them to the Holy Spirit to be healed, and then to accept that healing. At first, it was really kind of hard. I was surprised at how hard it was because I wasn't really used to watching my mind so vigilantly. And also, I wasn't really sure I wanted to let some of those thoughts go. I can remember one time when I was driving down the road and I started thinking about something that my ex-husband had done, which I was holding a grievance about. And I noticed how it made me feel to think about that and thought, okay, this is a thought that I could let the Holy Spirit heal for me. And so I talked to him about it, about how I felt and how real the grievance seemed to me. It just seemed like he was really guilty. It was very hard for me to let go of that belief that this man was very guilty for what he had done. It just seemed so obvious that he was guilty. But I also wanted to be at peace. And I wanted my mind to be healed. And so I asked Holy Spirit to heal my mind. And what I noticed was kind of funny. It was that I didn't feel like I could just let go right away. It was kind of like running really hard and how you have to kind of skid to a stop. And that was what I was having to do. And I even told Holy Spirit, I said, okay, I really want this healed, but just not right this minute. I want to hold on to this for a little bit longer. And it was funny to me even as I said it, and yet I recognized the truth in it. So that was okay, but it was a good step forward because maybe it was the first time that I had realized that this wasn't going to be as simple as I thought it was. But over a period of years of being very vigilant for my thoughts and just watching for the emotions that the thoughts brought up, I was able to get used to noticing when I was thinking with the ego rather than with God. And what happened after a while is that I recognized finally that healing my mind was my purpose and that I really wanted to do this. Now, that's not to say that I never had another thought that needed to be healed, but at some point there was a shift and I never had another thought that I wanted to keep. I had never had another thought that I wanted to believe. So the thoughts go in and out of our minds, and that seems to continue for a very long time. But there does come a time when the realization occurs that there's a difference between noticing a thought in the mind that simply passes through and noticing the thought that I believe and that I want to keep, or even that I simply believe it, knowing that I'm not going to keep it, but at this moment I'm believing that it's true. So the simple process remained the same for me, but sometimes the wording would change. I noticed that if I kept the same words all the time, that they just became words and they lost their meaning for me. And so the Holy Spirit would lead me to something in the Course that would help me to um, find a different way to think about it, a different way to see it, a different way to say it. One of the things that he led me to was a passage that said, the Holy Spirit will remove the thought from your mind if you want him to. And that was very powerful to me. I mean, he would literally remove it from my mind. This helped me to understand even more clearly that my part in this process was to notice the thoughts in my mind and to be willing that those thoughts be removed. But the Holy Spirit does the actual healing. The Holy Spirit removes them. It's not my job to remove the thoughts. In fact, I don't think it's even possible. I can't stop believing a thought that I'm thinking, and especially if I believe it. So I need something outside of the ego mind to accomplish that for me. And that's what the Holy Spirit is for. He's the bridge between what we believe is true and what actually is true. He understands our belief, but he also knows the truth. So that was very helpful to me, and I still use that often. When I notice a thought in my mind that is an ego thought that's causing me to lose my peace, then I ask the Holy Spirit, please remove this thought from my mind. And to the degree that I really want him to do so, it's simply done. Something that I maybe was stuck in and believing and was hurting me. And then suddenly it just isn't there anymore. And I'm not experiencing that discomfort, that lack of peace that comes with believing the ego thoughts. I also began to understand what Jesus means when he says to accept the atonement. And when I began to understand that, that was another very useful tool, because I would actually say to myself and to the Holy Spirit, to Jesus, that I accept the atonement in this situation. And I can remember the first time that that occurred to me in a way that expressed how much I did believe it, how much I did want it. The Holy Spirit continues to be what heals what's in my mind, but through accepting the atonement, I'm saying to him, yes, I want you to heal my mind. And he cannot do that without my permission, without me saying, yes, this is what I want. And not saying it just with the words, but saying it with my heart, meaning it. This is what I want. I want the atonement. I want the belief to be undone for me. That's what the atonement is. It's the undoing of it. It's what the process, the system that Jesus set up to make this possible for us was the atonement. And so accepting it is my part. I accept the atonement, and then the healing has occurred. And the first time that I really experienced this very strongly was when my son was having a lot of physical problems, and he's grown, he's 28 years old now, and he had hurt himself very badly, hurt his back, and it wasn't healing. He was in a lot of pain, and there were some other things that were happening at the same time, physical things that were happening. And I had been with him while he was getting a procedure done, and it was extraordinarily painful. It was very, very hard for me to be there and to see that and to hear the pain in his voice, and letting that go was difficult for me. Probably a lot more difficult than it would have been had it been my own pain. So I had been working with this, and every time the thought would come up about my son and my fear for him, and I would recognize this is not what I want to do for my son. I don't want to be afraid for him. I don't want to join him in his fear and make his fear stronger. What I want to do is to know for certain who he is. And who he is a spirit, is a son of God, that he's perfectly protected, that none of what is happening here is real, and that that he's okay, that he is with God right this moment, as am I. But I was really stuck in the story. All I could see was his pain and the fear that I had for him. And so I kept asking, Spirit, please help me to do that, to see this differently. Help me to see the truth. Help me to be there for my son in a way that would be actually helpful, and that would be truly loving. And finally, I was thinking about the atonement. I was thinking about some of the things that Jesus said about this, and I said, I'm ready to accept the atonement for this. And I was just standing there actually in the washroom fixing to do laundry whenever it just hit me very strongly that I want to accept the atonement for this. And I just threw my arms out and I said, here I am, Spirit. I stand here before you, naked and undefended, and I ask you to heal me, to heal the thoughts that are in my mind. I accept the atonement in this situation. And just in that moment, all of the anxiety and all of the fear and the uncertainty just completely melted away. I felt kind of silly afterwards, standing there like that, but the truth was that was how I felt in my heart at that moment. And it's the prayer of our heart that does this for us, that allows the healing that occurs in our mind. I think that's one of the things, probably one of the most important things that I have learned in doing this, is that I have to really want this. It has to be more than a concept to me. It has to be more than the words that I'm saying. It has to be what's in my heart. Do I really want this healing? And it's surprising how many times I discovered that no, I didn't actually want it. And when that happens, I just ask Holy Spirit to help me to understand. Help me to see what it is in my mind that I'm holding on to and why I'm holding on to it. And he always does. Sometimes he brings me to a place in the course or to a teacher, or in the mornings, I write with Holy Spirit. I use one of the lessons, I use something out of the text or the manual for teachers, and I read it, and then I ask that I understand what it is that I'm reading, and that I be given words to express that so that I can share it. And so this is a very special time to me. It's a way that I meditate. It's a way that I just let go of everything that I normally think, that all the ego thinking, and I'm just with Spirit in that moment. And so sometimes that's when it comes to me, and he gives me words that I can understand. Sometimes it's not the ultimate truth. In fact, I'm sure it never is. I don't think that we can understand ultimately the truth, not here, in the way that we're contracted, and our thinking is contracted, and but we can be given symbols. We can be given ideas that are close enough to truth that it helps us to make that next step, to have that shift in understanding. So I had another way to do this, another opportunity to have my mind healed, and it occurred a couple of years ago when I started having a lot of pain. I drive a lot in my job, and have a lot of pain, and I had a lot of pain in my legs and my hips, a sciatica, so I'm told. And I had tried everything. I'd gone to the doctor, I'd gone to the chiropractor, I was taking pain pills, which is not a good thing to do when you're driving. And I just didn't know what to do. It gotten so bad that I told my boss I might have to quit. And I really didn't want to. I didn't want to quit my job. But the pain was so bad that I didn't think I could continue to do it. And I mentioned it to my kids, and a couple of my kids said, Mom, do you really want to do that? Because to work in an office after having worked outside and doing the work that I really like to do, and I realized, no, I really don't. And so I asked Jesus, I said, you know what? How can I do this? How can I let this be healed? Because so far nothing I've tried has worked. And of course I understand that I was trying to fix it out here at the effect, and but I didn't know what else to do. I had prayed for release from the pain and it wasn't working. And so I was doing whatever I could think to do, but it was working out in the world. It was as at the point of the effect rather than at the point of the cause. And so he led me to lesson 190. And this is a lesson where he tells us that pain is not real. He says pain is not real, and if pain were real, then God would not be real. And if God is real, then pain is not real. So, I've read that lesson many times, but this time it was, I was ready for it. It was time. It was time for me to understand this and to accept this concept. And so that's what I started doing. I said, I want my mind to be healed of the belief in pain. Obviously, this is what I'm supposed to do. I hadn't really thought about this as getting rid of the pain itself. I honestly didn't even think about that. What I wanted was to let my mind be healed. I told my boss that I didn't want to quit, that I changed my mind, and that I was going to continue to work. And so every time the pain would start, I would remind myself, pain is not real. So what I'm feeling is not real. I must be making this up. This must be in my mind. Where else could it be? That's where my body is. So that must be where the pain is. It's in my mind. And so I'm asking that the Holy Spirit remove from my mind the belief that pain is real. There were a lot of lessons that came through this. Some of the lessons had to do with a feeling of unworthiness, a feeling of having sinned and being punished, and just a lot of different lessons. And I'm very grateful for that period of time. It went on for several months. I would continue to have the pain, and whenever it would start, I would just go back to that lesson, and I would ask that my mind be healed. And I realized that there was something in me that was holding back from allowing this to occur, but I also knew that I wanted it. I wanted my mind to be healed of that belief. And as I began to realize that healing, if the pain is projected as a physical form of a thought in my mind, which is exactly what was happening, there was a belief in my mind that was being projected as if it were outward, and I was experiencing it as pain in my body. Then if I no longer believe that, if I let that belief be healed in my mind, then the pain would not be projected outward anymore. I don't think I had up until that point realized that that could happen, and that it must happen. If the pain is caused by a belief in my mind, then not having the belief there would cause the pain to go, not to be there anymore. There would be nothing to project onto the body. And so I remember one time while I was driving down the road and the pain became so severe. And I just thought, okay, so if this is not real, if this pain is not real, then what is it? And there was a very clear thought in my mind. This is the belief in pain. So I said, okay, I remember. I remember that that's true. And I don't know exactly how long it took, because it was just one day I happened to think, oh my gosh, I haven't had that pain in a long time. I couldn't remember the last time I'd had it, and I've never had it since. So the belief that was um, in my mind, that was projecting as pain onto my body, was removed by the Holy Spirit when I really believed it, when I really knew that that's what I wanted, when that decision was complete in my mind, and there was no part of my mind that still believed it. I had many such experiences after that, and some of them were quite extraordinary. I had one in which I was trying to remove a staple. It was one of those large staples they used to in wood to connect the material, and I was trying to remove it, and I had a screwdriver, and I was pulling it out, and I gouged my finger, and I made quite a hole in it. And I immediately grabbed my finger, and I thought, oh no. And then I realized, wait a minute, there is no pain. Pain is not real. And I realized it didn't hurt. And so here I am, I've got a flap of skin open, and I'm bleeding, and it didn't hurt. I went to the bathroom and washed it off and poured some alcohol and put some antibiotic cream, and it healed within a couple of days. It was just, this was my opportunity to reinforce this belief. And you would think after all that I would never have pain. But you know, the mind is concrete. It sometimes requires that we look at the belief in different forms. And so every time I have pain, I return to the truth. I remind myself this is not real, and ask Holy Spirit to heal my mind. So it doesn't happen nearly as often as it used to, and the pain doesn't tend to remain with me very long. So that was something that was really important to me. Another thing that happened recently is that I was brought back, and I can't remember the exact circumstances, but I was brought back to Lesson 190 again. And one paragraph 5, caught my attention. And I'm going to read it to you. It says, but it is you who have the power to dominate all things you see by merely recognizing what you are. As you perceive the harmlessness in them, they will accept your holy will as theirs. Again, this is something that I've read many times, but this time it was extremely meaningful to me. It just grabbed my attention. This was the Holy Spirit asking me to take another step. So this is another step in my mind healing. It's bringing me to the acceptance of what I am. So I read it again, and it says, but it is, and I read it in first person, but it is I who have the power to dominate all things I see. So I have the power to dominate all things I see. All things I see. And that includes the body. Oh, I remember what it was now. I had, I wanted to lose weight. And this has been a lifetime back and forth for me. And so, you know, I had said, Holy Spirit, really, I want to let this be healed permanently and forever. This thought in my mind that is causing me the anxiety about how much I weigh and the difficulty I have in losing weight and keeping the weight off, or whatever. I don't even know. I don't even know. That was really a very important moment for me. It's like, I don't even know what you want me to know about this, but I want to know it. And there were several things that had happened after that that was very helpful that led me up to this point. So it is you who have the power to dominate all things you see by merely recognizing what you are. So I have the power to dominate the body. This is really what I was doing with the idea of letting go of the belief in pain. So it's actually just another step he was taking me. He was saying, I have, but why do I have the power? I don't have it through the ego mind, obviously. This is not what he's talking about. He says, I have the power to dominate all things I see merely by recognizing what I am. And what am I? I am spirit. I'm not this body. I'm spirit. I'm the Son of God. So through the knowledge of that, through the acceptance of myself as what I really am, I have the power to dominate all things I see. And actually, I do all the time. I mean, everything we see, everything we experience in our world comes from a belief that we're holding in our mind. We but do this to ourselves, as Jesus says. And then he says, as you perceive the harmlessness in them. And of course, as I recognize and accept what I am, I will see the harmlessness in everything. Nothing will be frightening to me. This idea of this body that I can't seem to keep to the size that I think it should be will just become funny to me. And actually, the idea has become funny. I find myself laughing at it all the time. Even while I'm still working at letting go of the beliefs that are holding me hostage to this idea that I have nothing to say about the body, that it just happens to me. That one day I wake up and I weigh more, and one day I wake up and I don't. No, we are responsible for everything that we see. We dominate everything. Even our ego mind has a lot of power because it comes from the power that we have as the Son of God. So, as I perceive the harmlessness in them, they will accept my holy will as theirs. What a powerful, powerful thing for me to read at this time. And so that's becoming my my process at this moment. Whenever I find myself having to do with weight or with something that's happening, retirement has been a big thing for me lately because I'm 65 this year, and so I'm starting to look toward that, and it's a little scary for me, and so when I start to become afraid, I recognize, you know what, this is the ego trying to pull me back into the story. There is no fear. It's like pain. It's not real. This is something else that I've made up. And I have the power to dominate all things I see, including the financial situations, weight, the relationships, and physical things. It doesn't matter. They're all forms of the same thing. And so I have the power to dominate all things I see merely by recognizing what I am. And as I perceive the harmlessness in them, they will accept my holy will as theirs. So this is an ongoing process for me, but I am noticing the fear falling away from many of these things. And as I do so, that is me seeing the harmlessness in them because there's no more fear about them. So I've enjoyed talking today to you, and thank you. Thank you for being here and for joining with me in the healing of our minds.